Hello campers, glad you could make it. Here we are again, 2024, our first chat in May no less. We've been away for 6 months. We've enjoyed those 6 months, people.
A nice break.
Yeah, nice break. Not long enough to some. I'll give you a quick lowdown on mine and then let's talk to our main guy here. Basically, after the release of the book and the so-called presentations and podcasts and so forth in September, October, November last year, and we had our last chat in November before you left, and I basically started a new job in middle of Jan, and that's been full on ever since, and not a lot of time. But I've started to work about the archives. I think our main subject should be the archives, basically. Let's just talk about the paperwork and maybe some bits that we've got in there as such. So about 2 weeks ago, I finally got myself another computer and started setting it up to basically do a lot of graphical jobs, and one of them was basically for me to go through all the old documents that I've scanned in, and we're talking from the period, say, 2018, late 2018 till, say, COVID. That was 2020, so, and then about additionally another 4 or 5 months later, so just after lockdown had finished, the first lockdown had finished, I scanned everything in a particular way, and that was especially during 2018 and 2019, because then I was scanning things into the speed. It was all about speed, so a lot of documents got squashed together in these scans, and the PDFs are basically just 40-50 pages thick, and miscellaneous documents and so forth. So I started looking into these, and this is basically the paperwork that I found in, what was that place called again? I always forget it. Where you had your archive before. Tedbury.
Yeah.
That's it. Tedbury in the Cotswolds, and they're my earliest scans basically that started in the autumn of 2018, and it started with Harry Livingston's materials. And it wasn't until Feb 2019, because the last few months of 18 and from October onwards till the end, and the early few months of 19 I basically spent on trying to get as much scanned in as possible. Now later on I got a better scanner, and it had better software, and it allowed me to apply OCR and so forth. So, but there was still about 12,000 PDFs that weren't treated as such to that algorithm of the OCR. So that's what I've been doing. I'm almost finished, but then now the renaming comes, and that's going to take me all summer. I'm just taking it easy and do it in batches, and then hopefully by November, a few weeks before the anniversary, we can release the Blunt Archives fully searchable. We're going to have several thousands PDFs on top of what there is already. It's also going to be housed on a new place. It's going to be at the Dealey Plaza UK Google Drive instead of my Prayerman Google Drive. The reason for that is that I just, if I'm not around, or so other people basically can manage those archives as such. I mean, I'll keep a copy myself, and it will be there, but for Dealey Plaza UK and everybody else is just, it needs to be with them, and I think that's a good idea. And also, others will manage it after me, and and I think that's the way to go forward. And it's what's most important is that everybody has access to them. As long as we're around and we don't have a nuclear holocaust around the corner, yeah. Let's talk positive here. So then those files will be there for everyone to go through. Now, the beauty of it is that it's so big. I mean, the case is big, but your archives are big. I mean, you've spent decades literally on getting it, and
But it's addictive.
Yeah, it is. To some it's addictive, and to a lot of people it's scary. And I only have partial grasp of what's going on. I mean, there are people that know more with, say, the coding and the stamps and the you know, the bits. I mean, besides the euphemistic language of the Central Intelligence Agency, for instance. But if you're just looking at, say, the bureaucratic element of the FBI documents, for instance, and this sounds really nerdy, I know, but it's like the stamps and the little scribbles and so forth. That's a language by itself. I think John Newman did, for instance, on the CIA documents, we basically managed to decipher certain things and all that. But
yeah, he did very well.
It is unexplored territory for a large extent.
It still is, because, you know, I mean, I haven't done a great deal, but in the year before I went to Gran Canaria, I mean, I looked at, you still look at CIA stuff and find new components, which is absolutely, you know, components you'd never heard of. It's just enormous, you know, the whole agency stuff. If you look at the CIA perspective, and trying to unravel how that organization works, it is, and I think we're only at the beginning of it, really. I mean, there's just like,
you will never find out.
There's so much stuff that's been released by the agency, by CIA, which is useful, and even stuff which is on their own computer, you know, the CREST computer at the National Archives. So some of that stuff, of course, you have to go to the National Archives to get on that CREST computer, right? But
what is it called? A CREST?
CREST. Yeah.
Quest with a Q.
No, CREST.
Okay. CREST. Okay. What is on that computer?
Well, you could be fooled into thinking very little. I mean, the odd times I've looked there, you find a lot of interesting material. I mean, they take a lot of open source material and place it on there.
Diluted.
But there's some really esoteric stuff, particularly to do with this Office of Security and some of their subcomponents, how they function.
Bruce Soley's territory.
Yeah, Bruce Soley's territory. You find that stuff there, heavily redacted, obviously, because it's, you know, a CIA computer. But it's still worth a look. I mean, if anybody gets to the National Archives, they should definitely look at the CREST computer. I mean, if you ever got there, I would recommend that you, looking at the original stuff, the first 48 hours, look on that CREST computer and see what you can find, because you never know what they might have picked up and stuck on there, you know. And
are we talking about like a old school fashioned like computer with a database with just old green lettering on a black screen, or are we talking about a Windows type of situation?
Yeah, Windows type
yeah?
stuff. Yeah, you can definitely get into the stuff and then print it out up there. You know, a big printing machine, so you just knock on it.
I want to go.
So you know, I think there could be some useful stuff there for you. Definitely, I would recommend, and for everybody, I think I didn't used to think that, but I got on it a few times, and then I was there one time when there was a Hungarian girl there, and she was doing some research on the Kennedy case, and so it was really good about that. And she really got into some really interesting stuff. So definitely recommend that. Although it doesn't get, you know, people don't talk about it that much.
This is the first time I hear about it. How about that? And you know, how many times have we chatted now and talk about archives and stuff? I mean, for me, on my list of to-do things will be the bulkies, the FBI bulkies.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Because I go through that and I go, oh, I'd like to have a look at that and that and that, and especially on the photographic level, pictures, prints, slides, negatives, you name it, it's just in there, and I'm going, my God, I just need my scanner with me, and go there, and this, well, it's not bulkies called for nothing.
But it came in too, I mean, to be fair, when that was all assembled in 1966, roughly, when the FBI stuff sent their all of their stuff through, their evidence from the labs. They sent all that stuff through. And the documents themselves, as far as I can see, have not been tampered with. You know, there's a lot of stuff there. I mean, I think they were so confident.
I can see him going right now.
But I can see initially, if you go into, and this is what John Hunt found, how they disguised the evidence was they had this continual renumbering. Everything was renumbered. You go 2 weeks, and then the evidence would renumbered. And then you go another few weeks, it'd be renumbered again. And you have to try and follow this trail of renumbering. If you're trying to get back to the beginning with the evidence, you know.
Is this not also indirectly related to the photographic evidence of the Dallas police and the FBI? Because date-wise, that's a massive issue.
I think this is what and probably John Hunt was the only person that really got into it in a big way, trying to make sense of the renumbering. The renumbering was the cover and disguise for the FBI, so they could mess about with the evidence. They could do all sorts of things with the evidence. If you couldn't track it because of all the renumbering, you know.
It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does exist,
Yeah.
but.
Yeah. So I think.
How did you figure that out?
Well, initially when I looked there, I thought, well, what? I couldn't understand why they kept renumbering stuff all the time. They kept renumbering stuff, and then the only reason you can really hang your hat on this as a disguise, you know, to cover something which they're trying to lose. I mean, I think they did that with the Minox camera, for instance. I remember looking at that and thinking, well, you know, what the hell's going on here? You know, this has been renumbered again and again and again. You know, trying to track that stuff through. John Hunt did do it because he was focused on that and nothing else.
That's when you get the results. That's just the thing. I mean, you've got to focus on a certain subject and say, right, and just not take no for an answer and always say, there's more. There's more to this. There's more. Is there more? Let's find out. You know, that's what I did my thing like that with the Dallas police and basically the specifics of Oswald as such. Oswald's last 48 hours. For me, that was tantamount. And basically say, that's it, nothing else. Anything outside the TSBD, I don't care.
But the Balkans is a great resource.
Yeah, it's definitely something for me to go for. But just like when I just went, because you've got a finder's aid of that, and where it just lists everything that's there. I mean, overall inside the archive, there are several finding aids when it comes to records. That would be already a great starting point for anyone who hasn't been there yet, probably won't, but just who says like, you know what, I want to dig into this, and that like is a really good starting point. And then like you mentioned in a couple of interviews ago about the HSCA, about that whole, those shenanigans of the records and such, because the actual finding aid in itself wasn't really, you couldn't really find it, you couldn't really know what's going on inside the collection because that was missing as such. You remember that?
Yeah, I mean, that's the income and outcome in document register, which is so important because it tracks everything that came in and went out. And if you go to that, which is ostensibly a finding aid for us, so you've got 3 grey boxes, and you go there and you find page after page redacted. Doesn't work as a finding aid for us, does it? You know?
Yeah.
And you know, and then when you think about the things that have been deep sixed, I think we talked about, you know, the Finland trip.
Yeah.
Also, that's
beautiful.
You know, and the Louise Steenbarger stuff.
I'm amazed.
And that's almost resolved in a sense with the Supo stuff, you know.
Yeah.
Oh,
that was the other day you mentioned.
Yeah, Finnish intelligence.
Yeah.
SUPO. They put a load of stuff out, and I took a look at that online, and it seems to me, unless I'm not analysing it correctly, what they're saying is what Finnish intelligence the conclusion was they couldn't work out how Oswald got into Finland. Right. Now this is Finnish intelligence who have the VA links, they have the people at the airport, they have the manifest, they have everything. So
somebody must have stamped his passport.
yeah, but what they're saying is that, that he came in, as far as they could see, he must have come in via Stockholm. But
So it's guesswork.
yeah, but we're told the story is we're told that he flew from London. Was it on 10th of October or something like that? I think.
Yeah.
And arrived in Helsinki, and the story was that it was on, I think it was a BA flight or something, wasn't it, or British European Airways or something like that, and it just didn't make any sense because he couldn't make the trip from the airport to the hotel and check in time. It just didn't make sense at all. And then we had this witness, Steenbarger, that came, and she wrote to the HSCA, and
Yeah.
that's the pre-interview of her. And then there's an actual interview of Steenbarger where she says Oswald was on a military flight that came from Maguire Air Force Base in the US, what they call a MATS flight, and it flew into Prestwick in Scotland. Well, if you think about that almost confirms what Supo says. According to them, he didn't arrive on a regular flight. And the only reason they could come up with, he must have come in from Stockholm, or some sort of land crossing or something,
Instead of saying like, no, he came on a military flight in there, because that creates more questions.
Absolutely, that makes you think that it was some sort of intelligence operation. Yeah, sure. But when I went to those documents, and getting back to the subject, going to those document registers, you should be able to track her original letters. Well, let me go back a bit. There's the two things: there's document registers, and then there's letters received from the public. So you've got the 3 boxes, and then there's, I think, 2 boxes of incoming correspondence from people, from members of the public. Well, there's no correspondence from Steenbarger in original. She obviously got in touch with the HSC, so those letters should be there. That correspondence not there, and then you go to the document registers where you're supposed to have the stuff. She doesn't feature there. She only features in that interview.
It's a 2-pager.
I thought it was a bit longer, maybe 3 pages.
Yeah, it's 2 or 3 pages, and I think I scanned it. I did OCR on it the other day. I found it by accident, by coincidence. But I'm actually surprised how much documentation there is on Oswald and Helsinki. Yeah. I mean, it's an inch thick easily in paper, from a paper.
Well, the CIA was, fighting furiously to kick the can down the road. The Warren Commission kept asking for proof of when Oswald left and arrived in Helsinki, and they couldn't provide it. And so you get these internal cables where they're discussing it, and it's saying well, the VA links, that's their assets at Helsinki airport. It's a busy time of the year. This is June or July of '64. It's a busy time of the year, and they can't be, they haven't got time to. All sorts of baloney, when it's a very simple task, a manifest. Here's the guy's name. They've got that all the time, every time, for every flight, especially going into Helsinki, because they're looking for KGB personnel. It's really heavily surveilled. All the manifests are checked 12 times over, and they can't find Oswald on a manifest. So that was what I called originally a choke point, and then when we...
I call that the fingerprint of intelligence.
Yeah. you know, because we didn't have the Supo stuff at that time. But of course, it's, you know, these guys. And this book I actually do quite like. You know, for originally not liking it, I think it is good because it's good for people that.
We're talking about the JFK assassination chokeholds.
Yeah, chokeholds. You know, it's in small bits that people can understand.
Send me the check, Jimmy.
And but you know, when I originally talked about choke points, I didn't mean it to be interpreted as a set, something that had been proved beyond all doubt. Choke points I see as something different. You know, choke points I see as something where we need to do additional research. And that's, at that time, 2014 I think it was, in one of Alan's conversations, that's what it said, you know, particularly with Finland. But we now know, because of the Supo's release, that it's clear the fingers are pointing it back towards the military flight that Mrs. Steenbarger talked about in late October 1959, when she was on a MATS flight from Maguire Air Force Base with a guy with Oswald on his tunic. Seems to me.
That was Harvey.
Yeah. So they deplaned in Frankfurt, of course, and then from Frankfurt could go anywhere.
Yeah. No, yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's very international airport.
Yeah, major US Air Force Base.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I find the Helsinki chapter pretty interesting because also it's mirrored in mystery and
well,
fog.
They tried desperately because they obviously screwed up. There was a screw up.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't get it. It was not synchronized properly.
Mm.
So Oswald is get into his hotel before he can actually get there. You know, can't get to the from Helsinki airport to his hotel in the time. Go, you know, get his luggage, get through customs. Blah. So they had to try and explain that. Of course, they didn't explain it. When Ray Rocco was asked during one of his HSCA interviews about it, he just said, "Well, I don't think that was we could ever determine what happened there." I mean, a simple task where you sort of like a manifest, a flight manifest going into Helsinki, where heavily surveilled for Russian intelligence service personnel.
Yeah, it doesn't wash.
Doesn't
But
wash.
isn't that the same thing with Oswald's travel back to the States from Rotterdam? Because he doesn't, his name is on the manifest either, or something like that. I mean, it's missing, and they still won't give it after all these years in finding out. Instead, like, where's the evidence that Oswald was actually on it as such?
Yeah, there's a lot of that's what I refer to as choke points, and Jim and Paul Bleu and the guys interpret what I said choke points as being or choke holds as being in a way settled. You know, we know this for sure. Whereas my idea is with choke points is we're in a situation where we need to do more research. So
Yeah, I understand the point, and it's true. Because every time when I'm thinking like, yeah, I've got it, there's always something else that gets added on. And you know, and I only do the local stuff, but yeah, every time there's more stuff going to be added on. But I mean, it helped me because I was able to paint a pretty concise picture of what actually happened as such. I mean, of course, there are plenty of questions left over, but what do I have like a good general picture? Nah, I think I did, you know, from what happened in those 48 hours. I mean, so, but there's always something like where you can go, I want to add this, or I'm trying to find that, and what about such and such?
and of course you had some good news recently.
What's that?
Joe Backus found something quite interesting.
Is it the O&I thing? That
And I think
I found it because I was working on the scans. I found a document of the O&I that I just put up because it wasn't online, so nobody knows where it was, where it still is. But I thought, I've got a copy, I'm going to put this up, and I put that in the Facebook group. And the next thing, Joe goes, "Oh, you just basically discovered a whole new set of riff numbers that he didn't know about, but you know, inadvertently we basically put that up." And I was like, "No, I've had this damn document already in my collection for 5 years, but it's only because I came across it now that I went, oh, hold on a minute, that's a document that isn't online. Let's just put that online quick for everybody to look at." But you know, a bit of a small snowball effect.
well, that's what surprised me when over the years when you've said to me that so much of the stuff is not online.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe
Yeah,
that.
it's shocking actually how much. Every time in the beginning I thought it was 20%, but I think it's double.
Well, that's a lot. That's
And
a big
also,
percentage.
and don't forget that at some point, you see, in the beginning, I scanned in everything blindly. Regardless, I didn't check it, I just scanned it in because time was of the essence. And then during COVID, like August, maybe July or August, something like around that time, 2020, I was like, you know what, I've got the time, but I don't want to do double up anymore. So I started putting the riff numbers in Google. And then you learn relatively quickly how this works, because the riff number is 13 digits and it's got the dashes in between, 3 numbers, dash, 5 numbers, dash, 5 numbers. So Google will see it as a negative calculation of minus 20,000 something. And if the riff is online, then it will show it either Mary Farrell or the National Archives, or sometimes the National Archives publishes a list with just numbers in them. I mean, it's like, if you want to kill yourself with numbers, you get one of those lists and you just go through them. There's thousands and thousands of these riff numbers in there. And other than that, if you're lucky, you put it in, then you'll end up with nothing. Only the calculation by Google itself, and there's absolutely no trace of the whole document. And that's where it becomes really interesting. And then of course you've got also the ones that are mentioned in those archive files, like in those text sheets, those text pads, documents, and that's as far as it goes. And I mean, if it's online, I wasn't scanning it in. So what I did last year, for instance, I had a fair bit that I could just set aside because all the riff numbers matched with what Mary Farrell had on site, you know. But there were still bits where I go, not online. And there was a lot of stuff from the O&I. There's some stuff from the HSCA, Warren Commission stuff. Church Committee, amazing amount. You've got more than anyone else, that's for sure. And you know, so, and that's where it became really interesting, because then I realized what I'm publishing is not available online. So, you know, it'd be stupid not to publish this and just basically say, you know what, put it online, but tell everyone it wasn't online, because otherwise it's just a copy and everybody, yeah, I've seen it all, blah, blah, blah. So I just made it interesting. And then I was just absolutely, I wouldn't say shocked, but I was just surprised about the amount of material that there actually is. And it's just not just one agency, it's everybody. I tell you what, I think out of all the agencies, I think CIA has probably been most compliant with just releasing documents. I mean, when it comes to the amount, the whole Cuban thing, it's amazing how much stuff there is. The whole thing with all the cryptonyms and all the little operations and so forth, and all the sneaky stuff, and you know, that by itself.
I think that's valid. They were definitely, they complied much better than any other agency.
Yeah.
I mean, when you look at Defence Intelligence Agency, where you have 2 boxes at National Archives and 3 boxes, which is, you know, just useless documents. And
Customs?
Customs, where you don't get anything really except one box which is more or less empty. And you know, I think, you know, we tend to beat CIA over the head,
Yeah.
but they've done more than most other agencies.
Yeah, and the whole Cuban thing, I mean, it's unsurpassed in the amount, because that's what I felt. Because when I went through the riff numbers back then, it was more like, yeah, got it, yeah. And every time I tapped the numbers in, I was like, I'm getting bored tapping there, just going on the numpad all the time and tapping the numbers in, because it was online all the time. And whereas with the feds, it becomes really interesting, and Warren Commission, but church committee especially, and Schweiger and all that, you know, there's quite a few bits that are just like, it's not online, it's just not there. Why? I don't know. Is it conspiratorial? I don't know. I really absolutely don't know, because I also know that across the whole board there are documents not published online as such. But the amount of it, that is the surprising element of it all, because everybody all talks like, yeah, the documents have been this and they have been that, and then you've got somebody like Joe Bax who basically puts all the numbers together and basically finds out and basically calculates that there are a lot of documents missing as such, and you know, and then basically.
Well, Joe has always been, you know, way back, even when we were doing in the 90s when we were at the archives together, he was very much into absolutely trying to track, using those riff numbers and any numbers, stuff that the numbers that the review board was using. He was always into, you know, meticulously trying to document stuff, and of course that's the right way. That is the right way. You just said it. You know, if you want to go online, look up a riff number. It's much the best way. But if you're in a practical sense, if you're sort of trying to look at a vast collection and your time is compressed,
isn't that always the case?
You have to make a choice, you know. And there's a lot of things. I got riffs for many things, you know, many documents, as you know. There, loads of documents have riffs in my archive, but many don't. And you find testimony where I've only copied maybe a few pages and stuff like that. But in my handwritten notes, I've written down riffs and stuff like that, lots of riffs. And I sent a big pack to Joe Backus. So Joe has those notes. Whether he can make anything of them, my writing is not brilliant, so.
Neither is mine.
So, you know, maybe, I mean, those notes are quite important. You know, that.
Well, you've got quite a few notes, in all honesty, and I've scanned a lot of them in.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, for whoever fancies going through all that,
you find you know, I've jotted down a riff number or a comment or something like that, but you know, to actually physically get stuff copied in that vast collection is difficult.
I know.
Yeah.
It's just swimming in the sea constantly, just so much stuff basically to go through. Oh no, I know,
because you always talk about, you know, going back or think about going back. I did do it with a few collections. I did it with the numbered files, the HSCA numbered files. I went through that forwards and backwards. And then of course there were additional releases after I didn't look at that collection. There was another 22 boxes added. So do I want to go through a third time? You know. And then the murderous thing was the Warren Commission files, you know, all the interfiles, you know, that came between 2004, 2007, 6 or 7, which the National Archives did. They interfiled, allegedly, everything that was missing from the Warren Commission files. That was redacted, classified, whatever. And that all got interfiled into the box. And to be fair, I mean, if you look at entry 44, which was the office files of staff, and you look at Slawson's files, for instance, I mean, David Slawson had files in there, and the boxes originally were, you know, quite light, not a great deal. You go back to them after the interfile, and when you open them, they're stuffed, absolutely stuffed full. So a lot of stuff arrived, great, except they didn't put an index. So you can't find, throughout that collection, which is over 400 boxes, there's no index to get into the new material.
Mm.
You have to go through the whole collection again, which is not fair, really. Not fair.
That's a minimal expression. It's not fair.
Yeah, it's not fair.
So, JFK Assassination research and retirement. Does it gel together or not at all?
In what way?
Well, let's say, like, I didn't spend any time on anything, pretty much. I mean, I read something and I lose interest after 3 lines. So I'm not bothered about it. I didn't spend any time on the documents. So, do you still read stuff?
A few books.
Books. Yeah, you read mine, you read the Chokeholds book. But what about documentation and stuff? You didn't have a little folder underneath the mattress and sticking out and going, oh, right, let's have a go at this?
I have a few documents with me in Gran Canaria.
Yeah?
Yeah. But I've not, to be fair, I've not looked at them.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Okay. Yeah, I've got the same thing because I had a carrier bag, I had one of my bags filled with documentation. And I just looked at it and went, if I start with this, then I'm going to drown in it because I don't know where to start and what to do and start putting it all together and the amount of time that basically I have to put it all, stack it up and organize it in such a way that it starts making sense and all and so forth. And that's the time consuming part of it basically for me. I mean, because the rest just gels together and just writes itself pretty much. But I just thought to myself, nah, you know what? I wanted a break from it all. And I've been in it so deep. And now me working on your archive again is just a way of getting back into it. And hopefully when I go through the old stuff and find, oh yeah, I didn't think of that, or I didn't see that, that might maybe spur me on to do something as such. But other than that, I'm not really...
I think that probably the next phase should be for a lot of people. Like we've had serious researchers die, like David Lifton, with massive collections. We need to see those collections.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
There's going to be great interviews with people.
Yeah, because that interview that he had with Michael Payne, and Michael Payne said that Will Fritz slapped him that evening. And then we talk about Buell Wesley Fraser, and Will Fritz raised his hand again that same evening. So that was something about the Michael Payne a bit. Nobody knew about this until Lifton wrote this on the Education Forum and mentioned this. And this was an interview he did a few decades ago, if I'm not mistaken.
But I think
and all that's going to hopefully come out.
I think his collection, if it's accessible, is going to be a really significant addition.
Yeah,
for research.
Yeah, I agree. I mean,
research.
I don't agree with his snipers in camouflage clothing on the grassy knoll and all that stuff, but I know he did valuable stuff by basically digging in the archives, talking to people.
Plus he he interviewed a lot of people, back in the 60s.
Yeah.
Which is, would be great stuff to have.
It's the old, I mean, I'm into the old stuff anyway. It's the best. So for me.
And also Ed Epstein, he's obviously passed on. His collection needs to be accessed.
This is something that I've been speaking with Alan Dale about as well. I said, you need to get this stuff online. You've got it all in these storage units.
It's a lot of stuff.
Doesn't matter. Just make a start. Begin with it. Just get it scanned. Get a box a week through. Just do a box a week. 100 boxes. 2 years later, you've got it. And that's just doing it at a snail's pace. And if you got some money, get some students on the go and just tell them to get busy and just do it. Because once it's digitized, that's it. You don't have to worry about it anymore. You can bury all that stuff in a mountain, or play shredder or whatever, or make a nice little bonfire, whatever. But I mean, the fact that it's stuck in storage units, it's not good enough. That's the reason why I got involved with yours, because I remember talking to William Lloyd. He says, it will just be in a shed in a field in the middle of nowhere, just stuck there. And I was like,
that made sense to me, because I know Jim is our good friend. I know that from personal experience there, lots of stuff just lying around in boxes everywhere. Boxes upon boxes on boxes. And I was fortunate to get into the Earl Galt's papers, into the filing cabinets of those. And, that's a great resource for people doing early research. Absolutely.
He did a lot of good stuff. He spoke to people. At least he made the attempt to talk to people and try to get something, out there.
Yeah, I would recommend that.
I mean, Jeff Meek is similar, actually. I would class him in a similar vein as well. Gets to talk to a lot of people, keeps writing about it. It's pretty cool. But yeah, Earl Galt's was quite something, because especially in the 80s, did a lot of good stuff, good articles.
So, private collections from people that have passed on, and as long as that stuff's, what worries me is the loss of stuff.
Stuff gets just basically straight in the container.
We've talked to my friend Stan Clark in Nashville. His stuff, I don't know where that is. He had a huge collection of stuff which was supposed to go into the Irving Library. Never arrived.
No, we tried to get that.
We tried, yeah. And Rush era stuff up in Absalom, New Jersey. Never saw that really.
No.
It was like even when I got to it, and instead of being quite a reasonable sized locker storage unit, it got it into, let me think, about this wide, very small unit with mainly books. And when I asked the person that was dealing with it, what happened to Russ's files? Oh, that was all off the internet. That went in the dumpster. Well, Russ Shearer did a lot of work, interviewed people. So that's a loss.
It's a loss. Yeah, it's amazing how much stuff gets lost, but it's also the fact that a lot of people don't know that today's technology enables you to bring it out in the open for low cost, okay?
To a wider audience.
An enormous audience. Anyone who searches for it can find it. That's why I said to myself, I'm going to do this, I'm going to put this archive together, because it's valuable and there's so much stuff in there that a lot of people have never seen before, and also a significant amount wasn't released as such officially through NARA, and I thought, no, I have to bring this out. And also, I thought it'd be great for Dealey Plaza UK as well. It'd be a bit of a coup to basically release that and say, hey, here you go, these are documents that haven't been released through the archives yet. And on top of that, you had a lot of materials as well that don't come from the National Archives, but come from other archives as well. So there is no rift system in place.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. When we talk about other archives, I don't think we know the half of what exists out there in universities and libraries.
Yeah.
We just don't know.
Yeah.
I think that's untapped resources, really.
It's a lot better compared to, say, 10 years ago, but I'm looking forward to the coming 10, basically. And people just, because I think all these universities and all these foundations, or whatever you want to call them, that hold all these archives, getting to a point and go, why are we paying so much rent on this? Why don't we just spend money on getting this digitized and put it on a server and have a copy of it? Yeah, and then a lot of people say like, okay, cool, so we can get rid of the paper eventually. Yeah, of course, digitize it, make 2 copies or 3 copies, spread it out, and make sure and make it available to people. And then on top of that, you could say like, well, I want $50 entry fee for you to go in here and basically grab this stuff, so they basically make some money back on all that effort as such. But I know it's available to everybody, but not everybody's going to go it. This whole thing on, this to me is the deepest kind of JFK Assassination research. Go to the archives. That's why so many of you fail at this. But, I'm kidding. Basically, but because now as well, what a lot of people don't understand is that you can email the archives and you can say, hey, I'm looking for such and such a document and this, that, and the other. And they, it will take time. It could take a month. It could take 2 months even before they come back. But they will come back, and then when they have it, they'll give it to you. I mean, you can have it, but you have. And if you're even more specific, that gets a much quicker answer, of course, and say, well, I'm looking for this riff and that riff and that riff. And then basically you just get that. And it's the same with artificial intelligence. If you know a little bit on how to use that in conjunction with the documentation as such, again, you save so much time than the physical part, that because what you might think is really daunting.
But isn't
to
that
attend.
only as good as the data you put in?
The data that is there is about how you put the question in. But you know what? That will take maybe 5-minute YouTube video to learn how to ask the question, which is no different than when you ask a question to Google. 25 years ago, nobody knew how to ask the questions to Google and go, I don't get the information. No, you don't ask the question correctly as such. If you do that, it gives you everything that you need. So, and of course, that's been improved and recalibrated over all those decades, and that's no different with ChatGPT or its alternatives. And that's another thing. There is the amount that's coming out every month about artificial intelligence and the websites and the things that it can do and so forth is absolutely staggering. And the pace it is going, it is, you can't keep up with it. I mean, I was on 4 newsletters, I dumped them because every day it was like, hey, we got this and that, and blah, 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 video and songs and da-da-da-da, and text, and over again. And because every time there was a different site that would be able to...
What about your image of Oswald on the steps?
Well,
can
that's...
that be...
Yeah, no, that's what we want to use...
Super digitized using AI.
The problem is that the resolution of the photo that we've got, the resolution it sucks. And that's the thing. If we get a scan of that film, then it's over. And I mean, or just beginning. And basically just says we use artificial intelligence to de-blur or sharpen. We can do things like that already inside Photoshop. So there is an algorithm that basically does things like filling space. Like for instance, I'm sitting here, but say this carpet or this picture, but I want this picture to be spread out all over the background as such. Then we can basically fill the space, and the algorithm allows us to do that as such. That's what Photoshop now does. So at some point, there are already many sharpening techniques and deep blurring and so forth. But artificial intelligence is just a little bit better at that. And that's where it becomes interesting, because I'd love to use that, but I need to have a better resolution first. That's the problem. And the same goes with the Wiegmann film and the Darnell film. It's just, if they would give us a good quality copy, it'll be over. So, but that's why they stick to that. And they don't give it away, it would be, it would be end of story, basically, because we just basically blur Oswald, make it, well, I wouldn't say like razor sharp Oswald.
Is there a copy of the Wiegmann film in the FBI bulkies?
I don't know. I haven't looked for that yet. But I will try. I'll try.
They got all the movie film.
Yeah, they have a few bits. Yeah. Yeah, they have a few bits. It just depends on what copy as well, because that's another thing. Generational copies. Here in digital age, it doesn't matter when you get a digital copy of something and you're looking at near exactly the same. But when it comes to film, so film is shot on a print film, then turned into a positive. And from the positive, you need to make a copy. You make another print copy. Then you go to another positive. Then make another negative copy. So there's a generation. Every time you do a generation in between that, you increase the contrast, you lose detail, and on top of that, everything like mushes, like gets into a swamp and just mushes together, basically. That's analog. That's the problem with analog. Back in the day when I used to have to make what we call an internegative of a slide. They said like, no, we want a black and white print of this. So we had a slide and then basically projected it and processed and made a black and white negative on 5x4 inch. But we had to process it in a specific way because we knew we were going to have generational loss and so forth, and basically try to put as crisp as possible with the right tones. And you know, it was not easy, especially then, but now it's like, you know, it's a walk in the park basically. So, but that's the problem. I mean, I got a great copy of really cool copy of the Wiegman film, 6K, but it was 5K, but it's, yes, due to the copying process, there's just certain amount of detail, and also, you know what, when they back then, I don't know how quickly they processed it and so forth. So you've got all kinds of artifacts from the developer and the fixer and so forth. It's all on there because there's another thing. You're going to take the neck and you're going to blow it up as big as you want to, right? And then you're going to look at it and then you see all the traces of all these chemicals and so forth are straight in there. And that's why you try and say, oh, I want the first, or I want the original, or I want the first generation copy. So and then and scan from there. And the 6th Floor Museum has a first generation copy of the Darnell film, but it's only in 2K. I mean, you know, you'd almost feel inclined to go, are you doing this on purpose? Because you need to find the highest resolution.
You have to think.
Because everything else is done in 4K with them. If you have the Towner film, it's done in 4K, and that was done more than a decade ago. And then all of a sudden they come 6 years ago, or 5, 6 years ago, they come with the Darnell film, and it's only done in 2K. Yeah, because there was a few internet postings doing the rounds about that particular individual in that Darnell film. Yeah, it's a strange coincidence, but it's a conspiracy. And but you know, so anyway, that's where I'm at.
Did you ever think about maybe doing some sort of putting together our conversations about when you used to query me on stuff?
You mean the
back and forth?
The emails?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
I mean, that would be a huge job, but I mean, it's
I use it basically.
It's quite interesting because.
So the way this works is that
I unwrap things.
Yeah, because I was given the archive, and I only, because of my interest, only knew about mostly Dallas related stuff. Next thing I know, there are boxes and bags full. By the way, this is a bag that would hold all the files. I've done more than 100 of them, filled with the paper, and there was stuff from the Cubans, and I'm not really interested in going deep into the Cubans.
No. Central
Intelligence Agency, yeah, it's interesting to read, but it's not like, oh no, I need to know more about this. It's like, okay, so, and there were individuals, Bill Sturbitz, for instance. I knew Raymond Rocker, but still, they are, and also the time element, like when were they active, what were they doing, what were they part of, and so forth. I didn't know jack about any of that, and that's when I started emailing and go, what's about this? I don't understand that. Tell me about this, blah, blah, blah. And then I grabbed that information and I tried to put it in the title, what it was about. And then I also by talking to you, I knew what it was related to. Mm-hmm. That's what was important to me. Mm-hmm. And then I basically knew how to categorize it and where to put it in as such. Sure. And that's roughly what I did, because I can easily put 15,000 PDFs into one folder, and just go, there you go, see you later. Yeah? And everybody will go, thanks a lot, mate. Or I thought, you know what, I'm just going to use a Windows file structure and make, I don't know, 20 odd main folders, and then put a lot of sons and daughters inside and basically subfolders as such. So CIA is one big folder. FBI is one big folder, but then we've got Hoover, we've got Warren the Bruce, we've got Hosty, so you know, those are like the subfolders within the FBI folder as such. And the Warren Commission, basically I had commission members having all their own subfolder as such. that's just for people that would just want to browse and get distracted and go, oh no, what's in that and what's in that. Whereas if you do a search function, you just search over the entire package as such. So there's two ways of basically going through it. That was for me basically because I adapted that system as such. I basically put it together, and that's when you and I had our conversations about these emails. You're going to get a whole stack, by the way. There's about 100 or so coming still. So with what is this about? But I might just be able to figure it out now after all these years of messing about.
I don't mind.
But the good thing about it is that you give me context sometimes and give me a good story, a paragraph or two's worth, and that's when I basically, when you do that, when I post the pictures in the Dealey Plaza UK group, and when I post the link to the document, and then I put your text in it as well. So
that's good.
Then people can read it with the context as such. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely, so that is happening. Oh, but yeah, for the majority, it's like putting it in the title and where it belongs as such. But then when it's like, no, he was obfuscating this and he was fibbing through his rotten teeth, blah, blah, blah. That's when it becomes funny and interesting, and I go, right, let's put that in on Facebook. But also because if that particular document is not online as well, that's when it, so there's several points of interest in that particular document, and I just do that. So, but yeah, all right.
Well, I was, one of the things, I was thinking about in recent days was, we still get this, and I know you've said to me at different times you were sort of like drawn into Fletcher Prouty and things like that.
Yeah.
I always remember sitting on a bench and talking to Fletcher Prouty after he finished a presentation at Georgetown University.
How long ago was this?
1994, I think. Yeah.
Right.
And he was waiting for a ride back to Alexandria. He wasn't in good health. Not in good health. And we got, part of the discussion was obviously, he asked me what was interesting. I said, well, I've just got into really focusing on Oswald, you see. And Fletcher got quite upset, het up about the fact that I was focused on Oswald, because he said to me, Oswald's not the case. Oswald's not the case. And we went on and talked a bit further, and then he said to me that the people that jiggled with the dates, that were messing about altering the dates of the Honolulu conference, were people that should have our focus as being possible conspirators in the assassination. And that a few years later, I got into I think it was the Wheeler papers. Do you have the Wheeler papers?
General Wheeler.
Yeah, Earl Wheeler's papers, and there were maybe 5 or 6 documents of an interchange between Dean Rusk and Henry Cabot Lodge, where the dates were jiggled with. They went back and they went forward, and they were changed. So I always remember. I just wonder. I wonder where you actually filed those papers, because there was no riff. I don't remember.
No, I have to look at. I have to look through it. Actually, let's look at it.
Thinking that how emphatic he was that the people that altered the dates of the Honolulu conference were people that would be, so to speak, in the know. Yeah. They would be in the know. And the two people were Dean Rusk and Henry Cabot Lodge.
Wheeler Papers, Upline 34A, Upline. Wheeler Papers, Upline 34A. Yeah.
That's the.
This is all
Vietnam stuff.
This is JCS stuff, yeah. Okay. Then I've got General Wheeler, 1, 2, 3, Policy and Planning. Earl Wheeler, Policy and Planning, folder. Wheeler Papers on Cuba, a lot of Cuba, more Cuba, conference. So, let's have a look what's in the folder. There you go, that's what I've got. So then we'd have to look and see what this says.
Would it be under a name, like Dean Rusk, or?
Wheeler
How much
papers.
in your collection? In your
This comes from the
collection?
Kennedy Library.
Oh, right, okay.
I think it was Alan that brought this up. I think Alan brought up Wheeler to me, and he was blah 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 Wheeler such and such, because he was working on with John Newman on volume 4, I think, back then.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, hold on a minute, that rings a bell. And I was like, why? I think I found some stuff on Wheeler, and that's when I told him. I said, I've got this and this and this. This is all coming from, as you can
Well,
see.
this was obviously cable traffic from its State Department material.
Right.
The interaction between Cabot Lodge and Rusk to do with the planning and the implementation of the Honolulu conference, which, as we know, was November 20th, November 21st, I think. And Fletcher was quite clear that he felt that the people that were involved in moving the dates around were possibly in the know.
This is the interview between Clifton and Wheeler as well, what I've got here.
Yeah, I think the cables are just in, obviously, courtesy cables. He was probably copied. I would imagine he was copied by Rusk and copied by Cabot Lodge, just routinely, because he was a JCS guy.
Yeah, it's all Vietnam and Cuba related stuff.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I think we're calling it a day. I mean, I'm running out of what to talk about. Is there anything else?
No, I don't think so. I can't
No.
think of anything else.
Going back to the beach.
Back to, yeah, well, that's where my thoughts are.
I don't
You see
blame
that?
you.
The photographs.
Yeah.
There, yeah.
Yeah, just staring out in the sea.
It's not too far.
Who's got issues with that?
Not too far.
On the beach.
Yeah, so it's been 6 months. I don't know what's going to happen over the next summer, this summer or in autumn. We'll catch up sometime.
I keep getting booted back. The dates I want to go, and I get, oh no. Leave it later before you go back. Leave it later before you go back.
Okay, so, right. Well, if we come back, and you'll find out. Thanks all for your time and your interest, and I'll keep you up to date with the Blunt Archives. And you know what? If you ever have a question, put it in the comments, and
By all means, yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I will take note, and we'll ask Malcolm to answer them, and yeah, whenever that's going to be. I mean, we'll see. We're not in a rush, so, and we've got some new stuff to share. I mean, so, and hopefully now, by the time when I'm going over the next few months over through the documents, I might come up with some proper questions on some of the documentation.
Yeah.
And
Well, you're sort of going through a refresh period.
yes,
Yeah.
So because that's the beauty of it, because you think you know it all, no, you're not even further removed from the truth. So start afresh and read it all again. Oh, yeah, okay. So
Well, when we were back and forward with the Q&As, it was like seeing the old documents in the new light for me. It was like, I didn't think of that at the time. Or
yeah,
anything,
no, I've got the same thing.
Yeah.
So when I read about it, and all of a sudden I go, hold on a minute, yeah, huh. And that's the beauty of it, by just now as well, just being out of it for a time period, and then go back into it. I mean, that is, if you're interested still, you go back into it and you go, right, yeah, okay. And when I did that in the late 90s, when I quit, only to pick it up again in 2010, and just that 12-year period of not doing anything made me change my whole approach, because I quit purely because of just angry about the whole thing, the state of the world and how it was done, and blah blah blah, and all that conspiracy blather. And then I walked out of it, and I was like, now, you know what, if you want to do this, go for the evidence, and just go after the evidence and look at the evidence, and forget books for now. Just use books as secondary source instead of using it as a primary source. Use the documents as a primary source, and then you see the books whether they got it right as such and stuff. And that's enabled me to do, when I put my Prayer Man book together, it enabled me to, yeah, you know, I did stuff that Sylvia Marr had done, and Paul Hoch as well, Paul Hoch. And, you know, and I was like, yeah, I've got 95% of what they wrote down. I just got like a couple of bits extra because the stuff that you found that they hadn't gotten their hands on wasn't big, wasn't like massive, but it was just little bits.
But you don't catch things, you know, especially, you know, if you're working in the National Archives and you're speed reading a lot of stuff, copying and taking notes. You haven't really got enough time to really analyse what you're looking
Absorb
at. Absorb it, you see. And that thing with Joe recently, with the ONI document, the one document I found, looking at it, very interesting about Admiral Taylor and his involvement.
Admiral Rufus Taylor,
because he was there at the get-go, you know, in '59 when Oswald defected. He was the guy that did ordered the post-defection investigation with the guy I met, Fred Reeves, who was a security officer at the San Diego field office, ONI San Diego field office. So, and Taylor is another one of these ubiquitous guys, you know, that shows up all through the case, obviously with knowledge of Oswald as an intelligence operative, you know, right from the get-go, you know. And there's Taylor involved in, I think I might have said to you, Taylor involved with making sure that Bruce Soley is the guy that does the counter, the rebuttal to Pete Bagley's 1,000-pager, which proved, you know, beyond a doubt, I think, that Nosenko was not bona fide. So Soley is then involved, courtesy, really, of Admiral Taylor's push. He was then deputy director of CIA. So interesting. It gets to be a small world, you know, with the people that had real knowledge of who Oswald was.
Will we ever find out? Tune in next time. Thanks very much.
Next episode next week.
Yeah. Thank you all. See you later. Bye-bye.
Ciao.